Hi, this is our last class today on level 7. This is the last transit interpretation class, but we're doing the horoscope of Sigmund Freud. We did Carl Jung's last week, and we're doing it for the same time period for when they were together and when they split up. I mean, they each have such dramatic lives. We could have taken a lot of other times, but I just wanted to choose this time of how the two of them came together and split up and what was going on. Half really for my own curiosity as much as anyone has anything else. Okay, so, all right. I mean, Sigmund Freud was the founder of analytical, what do you call it, psychotherapy or analytical psychology, psychoanalysis. He was the main established one and still is to this day. And Freud was his student for a time and built up his own thing. But Jung's materials never become as accepted as Freud's. In all the universities, I think Freud's very established, but Jung is really on a fringe side of it. So it's an interesting puzzle, yet Jung has opened up so many insights and opened up psychology to the Western mind more than any other psychologist, at least in my opinion. So he reached within the psychological fields, but also he reached with his books and his outreach, he reached many, many more people. So there's Jungian societies, there's a whole network of organizations connected with Jung, and many other individuals studying him all over the place. I ran across him from studying from learning the I Ching, and he wrote the introduction to Wilhelm's version, which was about synchronicity. And I found that very fascinating. So I became interested in how Richard Wilhelm had an influence on Carl Jung. But then in that influence of Carl Jung was also influenced by Sigmund Freud. And Carl Jung had, before he even met Richard Wilhelm, had already been familiar in studying and experimenting and working with the I Ching. So that was how I kind of came into it. Also, I think in my just thinking off the top, there's a certain coincidence between the Freudian slip. You just say a bunch of words, and eventually some sexual or some keyword will come up that's the source that will slip out in the middle of that. That's the source of your complex that you have to deal with. And that would give the psychologist a tool to work in deeper, to see things deeper. And that's what Freud worked with. But so from that idea of the Freudian slip to the idea of the random words and the Freudian slip coming out of it, to the idea of throwing I Ching and having synchronicity and how things are connected more than in the moment, how there's a deeper connection between things, a subjective connection to outer phenomena he called synchronicity. And sort of like the throwing out words, the throwing coins, the synchronicity of the moment, all of these things have a coherent inner structure, inner approach to them. And probably Freud's was the most practical, down to earth in a way. Freud's was more sexual in that way. It was more yin and yang, and in a way certain fixed to the structure of the I Ching. However, Jung's was more subjective and fit to the inner teachings within the I Ching. So to me, these guys all had a tremendous interrelationship to other that affected the thinking on the planet and the merging of the East and the Western thinking and the globalization of the intelligence in the world. Whew, big talk. Okay. Yeah, I get pumped up. Anyways, so Sigmund Freud's chart, when we started, you see his chart. I mean, right away you see all this chart. Well, we'll come to it. First, the pattern type is the bucket. First thing you notice, all the planets on one side with this one planet way over on the other side. That's Mars, planet of sexuality. It's the focus. It balances all the, you have the idealism of the bull, but the outreach and the outlet of Mars. So he would see everything from a sexual perspective. He would see the balance of the Freudian slip, the sexual expression of things. You can instantly say, whoa, you see how he processed that way. And the complexes around what you can do and what you can't do. Aggression, rejection, action, reaction. These things were very much there, and he saw them as very much of a sexual nature. But just from that, when I first saw the bucket type, not the bull, the bucket type, which has the bull half and the one handle, the bucket, and saw the Mars of the handle, was just such an affirmation of the pattern types, of this pattern type. It would almost be a bull with the Jupiter Mars, but Neptune is past the opposition, so it forces it not into the bull, but then it divides the other way and it becomes the bucket. Okay, so bucket with Mars as a handle. His moon phase is the waxing new moon phase. He's born just at the beginning, just really it's like about 2 days, 2.5 days after the new moon. So he's just at a point where you could see, you might, he's just born just before sunset, but the moon's just following it. So you might be lucky, you might just see the thinnest crescent of the moon just after sunset. And he's born, that represents the beginning of new cycles, seeing the beginnings of things, seeing how things start. It's the beginning of light. The light is increasing. The waxing element of the aspect. The moon's conjunct with the sun. It's moved past it. It's been influenced by it. It's moving forward. So that has the feeling. There's a feeling of being a pioneer, of needing to express new things and to break into new areas. Okay, or seeing how things are beginning. So the Mars is pushing things. The new moon phase is showing the beginning of instigating things, of starting things, even if they're not showing, of starting things. And these kind of align in a certain way to them. But his sun is in Taurus, is in Leo. This is backwards. This is wrong. What's happening? How much? Okay, I didn't do this. I take one form and I fix up. So this one, yeah, no, this is Young's sun moon sign. So I used the form I was using it for me. So okay, this part's not correct. Okay, so the sun sign, we'll just switch over. The sun is in Taurus. It's always good to be double checking the chart with the forms just to see, because we're humans, it's easy to make mistakes and you're always having to catch them, and it's good when you do. So here's the sun is in Taurus, the moon is in Gemini, and the ascendant is in Scorpio. So while Young had Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, was really fixed. This is still fixed. The Scorpio rising and the Taurus sun is pretty judgmental and determined. The Scorpio rising pulls into the Mars, it adds another judgmental and intense side to it. So you can see the Mars handle the Scorpio ascendant. These are both part of his intensity. You can see that Scorpio intensity. Even when you look at his face, you don't just see the Taurus, you see the Scorpio, you get a Scorpio sense of intensity from him. At the same time, it's in his perception. So like he's Taurus with the Scorpio rising at 3-point fixed and 2 points mutable for the Gemini moon. So the moon in Gemini intellectualizes the feelings, rationalizes the feelings. So here you have a down-to-earth, tactile person who likes his comforts, likes his cigars, obviously, like it's a big thing, likes these things, but also intellectualize his feelings, and it has a curiosity. It's not, it is, so the ascendant in Scorpio, it broods, it judges, it goes really intensely into things, but the Gemini one doesn't stay there. It analyzes, it thinks, it's quicking. So you can see the idea of quick words coming up and quick words coming up. Suddenly a sexual point, aha, the Scorpio ascendant would pick up on the Freudian slip out of the voluminous, free-flowing words. Again, we're doing the chart in hindsight, knowing somewhat about the person. Now, so just this determined and adaptable, but not, the Mars has a pushy side, the forceful side. Scorpio ascendant is judgmental and sensitive, but the Sun and Moon both setting, so this 4-point setting went to 1 point rising. Like, just when you're looking at this chart, it's very reactive. The Sun is setting, this Sun Moon reacting, yet the Mars is putting out, and the Sun, so anything he would do, he would be very judgmental about what he did and about the reaction he would get to it. So you can see with this potential, his ability to see the sexual complexes or the reactions of other people, who's reacting well, who's reacting well, who did what and got what from it, and how people responded to him, and how other people responded to the situation. He would just be, his power would be tuned into that. So the Sun, the Taurus, you get the stubborn and the adaptable, but not really the driving, not really the pushy, ambitious. You have the determination, the tenacity, and the intelligence of this. So because the moon's in Gemini and intellectualize the feelings, it's not a deep feeling or a brooding. There's a need to know what's going on. There's a need to figure it out. There's a need to get a plan. There's a need to get ideas about things. Even for the Scorpio Sun, a strong judgment, there's a need to figure what it means and what it is about. It's very rational. And yet there's a Taurus kind of plodding nature, determined nature within that, of needing to be appreciated. So what do I do? Do I get the reward of what I want? Am I getting what I want? Am I getting rejected? I'm getting pleased. You can easily see this Mars-Venus element, and he interpreted it as he would be able to sense the satisfaction or dissatisfaction, content, discontent, and see how it was blamed on actions or non-actions, or right or wrong actions, or smart or stupid actions, or whatever. Just, you can see how it was the repercussions of actions. But this Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini. Okay. You wouldn't normally necessarily think of the Taurus as the psychologist. But a Gemini moon, a Scorpio ascendant, those two qualities really do, and the moon is in the 8th house. So this ability, it begins, as you begin to get into the chart, you see how it falls into that very specially, very deeply. Okay. Yeah, water, earth, air, not fire. So it's in the elements, it's not as inspirational as practical, intelligent, and judgmental. Yeah, so yeah, and you'll see the 4 points are the daylight increasing and daylight is greater. Those, the Sun and Moon, and the ascendants on the nighttime is greater and nighttime is increasing. So the ascendants identifying getting deeper involved, more committed, more responsible. Where their side are seeing the need to be independent, need to get freedom, need to express oneself, and get the responses one wants. Okay, so the interesting thing would be his relationships, his kids, his relationships around it, and that would be where a lot of his real story would be. You know, and we're seeing in context the history to his being a teacher, it's not really 3rd house or 9th house material. He's sharing his experiences, his perceptions. He's interreacting. He doesn't teach, he interreacts.